Well, howdy. Today's February the 6th, 2021. Sorry. Um, and today I want to talk a little bit about my childhood from the time I was about 7 till 10. We lived in Sapulpa, Oklahoma. And growing up in Oklahoma in the 40s and 50s was kind of an idyllic place to be. I was the first grandchild on the Kelly side, so naturally I got all the attention first and for a while. And on the other side of the family, on the Eldridge side of the family, I was not the first and not so special, but I always felt special to my grandma and grandpa, and my grandma Eldridge just always treated me perfectly. My childhood was about as close to idyllic during that time as any child could wish for, and school was difficult for me, but not impossible. And I kind of wanted to talk about some of the things that we did just as a daily life in Oklahoma during that period of time. Summers were hot and humid, as they still are. Winters could be bitter cold with we had ice storms, and a lot of times the trees and the telephone poles and the telephone electric lines would be covered with ice like that thick over top of a limb or the highline wires. And in the sunshine, they would just sparkle. It was like a winter wonderland. It was almost surreal. They were so pretty and bright and shiny. And school was kind of okay. We played two games as kids at recess, and one of those games was marbles. And I don't know if anybody plays marbles anymore, but most of us kids had a front pocket full of marbles, and at recess and before school and lunch break and all of that stuff, we'd make a big old circle in the dirt, and each kid would throw in some marbles, however many he had, and everybody, it'd be 4 or 5 players, and everybody put in the same amount of marbles, and then we would draw another line in the dirt, and we'd take our shooter marble and lag, and whoever got closest to that line get to shoot first, and then just in the order that you were closest to that line is how you got to shoot. And we shot with our shooters, and the really good shooters were a little bit bigger than the regular marbles usually, and usually they were made of agate instead of glass. And so the way you played marbles for keeps, like if you got a big circle and you got marbles in the middle of it, and whoever shoots, you shoot your marble at another marble, and if you knock it out of the ring, you get to keep it. And if you knock it out of the ring and your shooter stays in the ring, then you get to shoot again from the point where you were at any marble, and you can keep shooting marbles as long as you shoot them out and your shooter stays in. And if you miss, then you pick up your shooter and the marbles that you knocked out, and then it's the next guy's turn. And so I was a pretty good marble shooter, not the best, but pretty good, and I always had both front pockets full of marbles, except when tops became popular, and we played tops the same way we played marbles. But tops were bigger. They were about 3 inches tall and well, that big around. I don't know how big that is, inch and a half or so. And they usually had a metal spike on the end of them, and you wrapped a string around them and wrapped the string around your finger, and you threw them, and they'd spin. And if you threw them and it spun and it knocked another top out of the ring, just like marbles, you got to keep that top. And so we played tops for keeps too. And I guess it was early gambling for grade school kids. I don't know. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. And then in the summertime, we often spent time at the Eldridges, sometimes weeks at a time, and also during spring break we'd spend some time at the Eldridges on the farm. And sometimes we would spend some time, or at least I would, I don't think Karen ever did, but at the Varners. Aunt Alma and Uncle Node. His name was Noah, but everybody called him Node. And my three girl cousins, Norma Jane, Wanda Ruth, and Mary Ann Varner. And the Varners put your butt to work. If you were there, you earned your keep. And we'd work in the garden, we'd pick up, gather eggs, we'd feed the pigs and the cows and the horses, and we'd go bring them in and work around the place. But it wasn't all work. Norma Jane was a little older than Rudy and I. Rudy was a little older than me. She was at least 2 or 3 years older than me. And Norma Jane was 5 or 6 years older. And so at, 9, 10, 11 years old, Norma Jane didn't want to have anything to do with me. She had her big friends, and Wanda Ruth didn't mind playing with me, but actually Wanda Ruth was the first female person that I ever kissed. She taught me how to kiss. That was kind of fun. I kind of enjoyed that. Anyway, and then Mary Ann was born with some disabilities, and couldn't walk right, or couldn't walk at all. And but she was bright little kid, sharp as a tack. And I remember going down there one, I'm pretty sure it was Easter, because the weather was off again, on again, nice and cold. But anyway, at Easter, one of our jobs was to clean out the chicken house, clean the chicken poop out of the chicken house and spread that over the garden, and get the garden ready to plant the vegetables. And that was a lousy, dirty, awful job. And Aunt Alma always seemed to be able to have that job when I arrived during Easter break. So that wasn't my funnest job. But Aunt Alma was a great cook, and they too, I think they had electricity. I think they did, but I'm not sure. But they cooked on a wood stove, and the water well was like Grandma and Grandpa at the farm at Grandma and Grandpa's was they dropped this long cylinder about 6 inches around and about, 18 inches or 2 feet long. They dropped that cylinder down into the well, which is like right on the front porch, and pull up the water and dump it in a bucket, and then there was always a dipper there. You could drink that water, and I remember that water being cold and just really good, coming straight out of an underground spring. Right, well, they built their house right over top of that, and but it seems to me, I think later on they plumbed that water into the house with I think when they got electricity, they plumbed that water into the house with the electric pump to that, and ended up having an indoor bathroom and all sorts of neat stuff. Electric lights brought wonderful things to 1940s Oklahoma. So anyway, the summer was, at that time, till I was about 10, the summers were spent just playing with the neighborhood kids and stuff. And one of the favorite things us neighborhood kids did was chase the Iceman down the street. At that time, they were delivering ice, big old 100-pound chunks of ice. They put them on a horse-drawn wagon, kind of like the wagon that we took the pecans into town on. Same old wooden wagon, one horse, and a whole bunch of ice, all covered with tarps of some sort. And the Iceman would knock on the door and see how much ice Mrs. Kelly needed that day, because we didn't have electric refrigerators then. They were ice boxes, kind of like an ice chest, but they were bigger. And they'd put this block of ice, they'd cut a block of ice to fit right inside that shelf in the ice box. And they keep your butter and eggs and milk cool, not cold, but cool. And then us kids would beg the Iceman for he'd chop off little slivers of ice for us to chew on and cool down, because it was hot in the summertime in Oklahoma. So Oklahoma was a fun, good place to grow up, and I'll tell you some more stories about growing up in Oklahoma in another version of this when I was a little older, and after I had I guess I was 10. That summer before I was 11, I was 10, and that's when I got my first job. Anyway, and we moved from Sapulpa to Oakhurst. Anyway, I'll tell you that story the next time. This time, just remember, Grandpa had a great childhood in Oklahoma. It was wonderful. Everybody loved me, and I loved everybody, and life was really good. Anyway, talk to you guys later. Love you. Bye.